Thank you, Jayendran, for sudden change in this. It always helps when when people come early and want to participate in other aspects. Yeah. Shrikant, you want to introduce him? Okay. First is, I would like to tell he is ex-EY. He was my colleague earlier. And the entrepreneur bug bit him. And then he started his own, doing extremely well. Co-founder and CEO of Vyaka Technologies, created Prudent.ai, an AI platform for finance. Expert in applied ML/AI, building business analytics since 2007, and worked with leading global organizations. And previously, as I told you, he was director at Ernst & Young. And I am Bangalore alumni, and fundamental qualification or training, you can say, is a chartered accountant. A great pleasure in introducing Jayendran. Please give him a couple of minutes. Your hand is definitely important. Please give him for agreeing to advance the session, but just give him a couple of minutes so that he can set his systems up.
So, good afternoon, everyone. I think we have both mics running. Okay, can you hear me? Okay, fantastic. Good afternoon, and thank you for first for Vyaka for this opportunity to speak, and B for you to be patient and comfortable with this change in speaker. So what I'm going to talk about is essentially on how AI, I had a AI in the finance and accounting space. So I just sat through a session of Dr. Rajiv Raman and on how he's doing ophthalmology with deep learning. So that was fantastic. So we do something like that for finance and accounting. So, okay, so I'm going to kind of start with like a strong statement. So accounting hasn't seen innovation since double entry bookkeeping. So how many people agree, disagree? Quick show of hands. Yes? Okay, yes, okay. So half the room thinks yes. So the other half believes there's a lot of innovation, I'm assuming, right? So just a context, I am not going to introduce myself. Very quickly, I'll just introduce what we are doing in our platform. This is simply around what we think should happen with AI and how it should work in the accounting space. The basic idea is better finance and accounting. And right now, we are doing some work in indirect taxes, with audits and with reporting. These are areas where we're already doing some work with applied AI. And this is loosely what I think is becoming, is going to become the future, where it becomes a part of, AI is not going to be something that's outside. It's not going to be something that's going to replace. This is something that is going to become part of and every accountant or every accounting department at some point in the future. The way we see it is something similar to software or something similar to electricity. It is like a general principle power, and how it is applied transforms something else traditionally. So like how using AI for screening transforms ophthalmology. This is expected to transform accounting, audit, which is a little bit of a slow adopter as a profession in terms of technology. Some tasks that machines can do today already is payable receivable processing, supplier onboarding, procurement, audits, monthly close. These are all areas where AI, there are different players doing work with AI. A substantial amount of work has already been done with image recognition technologies for travel and expenses. Expensify is one of the tools that does that, where you scan your travel bills, it identifies those bills, posts it in your travel and expense system, say Concur, and the whole process is entirely automated. All you need is a cell phone. And you don't need to do monthly filing of expenses. You don't need to file a claim. The whole process is done, right? And similarly, so expense management, AI chatbots are still, this is exploratory. Chatbot is again a very neutral technology. Depending on what libraries you're using it on, it has or does not have an impact. Why is this happening today, right? So broadly, I mean, financial information plus technology is why this is relevant today. Before that, I would like to talk about why this is a little difficult. Why has this been a slow adopter? As an industry, why has accounting been a little slow to adopt? Fundamentally, because legal rules are complex, right? The rules are genuinely complex, and laws are dynamic. So last year, something had a treatment according to law, like say perks. Next year the law changes, next budget the law changes and says no, perks are no longer deductible. Complexity in legal rules, something like this, right? You have a car, is it a sub 4 meter car or a more than 4 meter car determines how much tax that car needs to, the manufacturer needs to charge. Precedence is a very important determinant in accounting, right? And all legal work or accounting work happens on the basis of how has it been done in the past. More than a rule, that is more than all the other rules, whenever it is a judgment called by an expert, the typical first question that any expert asks is, what has been done in the past? Legal judgments also follow the same principle of saying, what has the court already said? And risk appetite is very different, right? So different businesses have very different risk appetites. There is a certain organization which is very aggressive. There are certain, say like a startup or an e-commerce business is very aggressive. A traditional manufacturing business is very conservative. So their risk appetites are very different. So the expert's role has judgments on all this. So single automation solutions cannot solve this for everyone. The other side is machine learning, right? So you need, why is machine learning a little hard? One, it needs some understanding of computer engineering, some understanding of mathematics and probabilities. You have to understand AI implementation projects are typically transformation type projects. They are not typical software type projects. There's a lot of work going on to try and simplify that and make it easy for people to adopt. We are also trying, like everybody else in the AI system, on how to make this easy for people to consume. And user awareness is very critical, right? The user needs to understand when this is being done through an AI system versus when this is being done through a human being. If some of you have been following this, there was a lot of news and a lot of talk about AI automatically speaking in the same Sundar Pichai's demonstration of AI making a call. And then there was a lot of agitation about how can a machine speak like a human being. We need to know whether it is a machine or a human being. That particular case is not a problem, but this is in fact a problem, right? This is a problem in different places. And these are the reasons why this is hard. Sorry. Broadly, right, so three fundamental things that are driving AI and are all in place today is the algorithms. They've always been in place. Most of the AI algorithms have been around from the 60s and thereabouts. Cloud has been a big game changer. Because of cloud, everybody has access to really powerful computers. So to give you a simple example, right, the same computers which we used to have to buy, we had to buy and do servers and implement and do this work in our accounting for our, in our work a few years back. And this is a typical procurement process. You go to IT procurement, they say, okay, we'll get you quotations, you tell me specifications, you look at it, then there is manufacturers, Dell, IBM, HP, you're evaluating, then you're placing a PO. By that time, the next model is released. Now the IT guy comes back and says, do you want this or do you want the previous one? And we do all this. So this typical process of setup took roughly about 4 to 6 months. Today, right, with cloud, when an engineer in my team wants an equivalent of a supercomputer to run a project, it takes him about 5 minutes to buy it. So to get a server up and running takes about 5 minutes to select and decide what server, about 30 minutes to set up. And then he discovers, no, this is not what I want. So he kills it. The whole process takes 1 hour. It costs us roughly about $10. This is how easy and economical this has become. So this has been a huge factor in terms of driving why everybody is talking AI and why AI is so important now, because it has become that accessible. Self-learning is the new nature of algorithms, where the algorithm learns unsupervised, where you don't tell the algorithm, these are all things that are important, go look at it, like how you train a person. Typically, this is about, in all training or learning, right, there are 2 parts. What can be taught, what cannot be taught. Like riding a bicycle, for example, is something that cannot be taught by, you can't read a book and learn to ride a bicycle. You can't theoretically learn the steps. You have to be able to do it and learn it. This is the nature of self-learning. Now, this is available. This is, again, technology that is commercially available. And these, sorry, I think I pressed the wrong button. Okay. So, yeah, so this is basically the combination today. The good thing, all financial information traditionally has been computerized and it is available now in good data form. And the technology has also caught up to be able to capture things that are not in good data form, like stuff that is in like a journal entry's comments, a journal entry's narration, and you need to read it, or an account description needs to be read. Today, we have great technology to be able to do this. Broadly, there are many subcategories of AI. What's called AI by different people have different dimensions. The part that we are very interested in is particularly machine learning. And broadly what it does is, it does very well is inductive reasoning, which is essentially figure out the rules from past transactions, where you can look at many transactions that have already been done, typically also called labeled data in some cases, and pick up rules. The traditional software is where you write rules and then the machine gives you results. In machine learning software, you're giving the machine past data and past results and it learns the rules. So this is fundamental, right? So with this and the fact that the computer is now super powerful, this makes it very important. What is also important, the other side, the devil's advocate side or the dark side of this is the impact of biased data. So this is why this is important for finance and accounting professionals. This is why this is not a job threat. There is an other side to this. The other side is, if the data is not right, the machine is not going to learn right. So you could very easily teach the machine to make wrong decisions. And because of the whole scale and computing power and multiplication, it can multiply wrong decisions very quickly across a very large set of transactions. So this is very important. So this is why if you're a risk management person today or an auditor today, it is very important for you to understand how AI systems make decisions. More than actually coding AI, you will need to know how to consume AI well, because that has a very important impact on how your output and your judgment and your work and how your audit reports are written in the future. So this is broadly an introduction, right? So some areas where it is making a difference in different dimensions of accounting, right? The first one is bookkeeping. The smallest businesses need it. And there is already software that can do automated data entry. It will connect to your bank statement and pull in transactions and put it into the correct accounts. There are software that can do reconciliations automatically and auto-generate the different accounting entries and all that. So there is an accounting automation index, AAI for software, which talks about how well they are AI adopted, and they all have different scores. So OneUp is clearly doing better than everybody else, but QuickBooks is also, interestingly, the most popular accounting software, fairly comparable to Tally, but on a worldwide scale. Tally, incidentally, are also doing a lot of work in data analytics and AI research in Bangalore, and trying to do a lot of these features in Tally as well. Typical transaction processing. Next layer after bookkeeping is the transaction processing group. Large GICs or outsourcing BPOs do this, where you have solutions which can do things like interact with suppliers. Supplier onboarding is like a big AP task. So you're trying to get a cancelled check from a supplier, a sample form with data from a supplier. I've heard some really interesting stories of where the supplier self-feeds his entire form, and then the organization deletes it and fills the whole thing back themselves, because their control mechanism doesn't allow the supplier to do this. So this is real in like a large GIC in Chennai today. So there are really interesting opportunities to do this here. For example, technology can easily recognize which supplier this bill is from. It can read the bill. It can identify which PO this is for, and process the transaction. Typical classic AP processing, three-way matching, today's systems can do. And all the other things around this sort of approvals and things like that are also available and automatable. The interesting part about AI adoption in finance and accounting is it doesn't happen isolated. This is not AI for AI's sake alone. This always integrates well with other genuine business software like workflows or approval flows. And that's where it makes a lot of difference. Management accountant, the next grade, right, is for them, this is very critical, more critical than regular accountants, because all their reporting comes from business systems. And how the cost centers are allocated, for example, is a judgment call. So you have an electricity bill, how much of which goes to which cost center is a judgment call. Today, if you have an AI system making that call, your reports also have an impact based on that. So, and reports have an impact. When management accountant reports have impacts, organization budgets have impacts. When budgets have impacts, organization directions change. This is the next higher step. Auditors, right? Auditors, this is classic. This is old data science, where instead of sampling, you can do the whole set of transactions with data science. This has been around. What is interesting is the machine can learn from audits. So from past audits, the machine can learn and become almost a junior auditor. That is what we are working on. So where today you are starting with a very small junior auditor looking at transactions, and then it filters up exceptions for the next layer to do. Today, machines can do that. And every time an auditor looks at machine output and says, yes, I agree with the machine, or I disagree with the machine becomes better. So iteratively, the machine is continuously learning and becoming better and better. And as we go forward, machines will be the first grade of audit. One of the things that we keep talking about, will AI replace talent? Will AI will replace jobs? The answer genuinely is yes and no, right? Very simple jobs, AI will replace. Data entry type jobs, AI will replace. Data screening, basic capture jobs, AI will replace. Higher expertise jobs, AI will augment. So now, if you're an auditor and you service only 25 clients because you have the capacity to do this only, now you have the capacity to do 200. So your job becomes bigger and greater because you can scale now. But you are not going to scale in the traditional way where you're going to add manpower in your entire organization structure. You're only going to add experts. You're not going to add non-expert, non-skilled work. AI is going to replace a lot of that, right? So this is in the audit space. More importantly, this is in the transactional audit side. More importantly, as an auditor, strategically speaking, the role has to change from performance of procedures to designing procedures, right? So the auditor's role in AI companies is very, very, very important because most of the decision is made by people who are computer engineers or data engineers. They do not understand risk and control framework so well. So when there are professionals who are really well trained in risk and control, they have a critical role to play in putting that in place. And how well the control framework is put in place is what decides how well this works in the future. So to give you an example, we have a system where we review transactions against for review payment transactions, and we identify duplicate payments. And we say these are all duplicate payments based on these parameters, A, B, C, D. So can the system directly flag off and stop payments saying these are duplicate? No, it cannot. When we've tried that, it has been a disaster, right? Invariably, whenever we've tried to do this, the system only stops the most critical payment that needed to go today, and that is invariably like some last transaction on like a long weekend. By the time we come back, the world is already like broken into war. We've seen this many times now in our implementations, fundamentally because this is not an entirely technology problem. So the handoff between machine and human is very important. Machine and expert is very important. So today, when these systems are designed, we specifically design for failover. We specifically design for a human being to be able to say this. How is it important? How does this work? When we go and say, this is the probability, or this is how this works, right? So for example, when we have a simple system where it can match your ID card with you. Suppose you go to an IT building like Tidal Park, and there is a visitor pass system. You give an ID, they look at your ID and give you a visitor pass, right? So there is a system that can do this, but the system cannot recognize this 100%. There are some times when the system is going to say, the person in your license doesn't look like you today, 20 years later. At that point, there is a human that needs to intervene. The system has to be designed by somebody who understands this. And this is very hard for engineers without formal training to do this. So this is one of the main roles auditors will need to play in designing control frameworks for organizations in the future. Corporate governance will change substantially in terms of this control framework. The compliance requirements are different now. For example, today you might be doing work, your system might be collecting data and doing some analysis or joining together data sets, which might make that data person identifiable. Though individually you had 3 parts of data which are not person identifiable, it is very easy for the system to put them together and make a person identifiable record. So that suddenly can move you from a position of compliance to non-compliance. Similarly, assessing designs of controls is a very critical task for organizations today. So suppose you are a large organization like Flipkart and you're doing 1 million transactions every day, and you have a payment interface where you're asking for where the system is doing some sort of a screening of the transactions. You will need to design controls around it well. Otherwise, you can suddenly have 1 million transactions fail very quickly, right? So, and mitigating machine learning risks from biased data is a very, very critical task for every auditor. So anytime one of your clients or your organization says this is going to be a machine decision, you will need to learn how it's trained. How does the machine make this decision? You need to test the decision today. Like how you would do IT general controls and say, this system is passing this test. You will need to do an AI general controls test eventually to say the system can make the right decisions for these cases. And that is, today, this is not available. So today, as we talk about auditing frameworks worldwide, this is not there. And it is a matter of time before these are in place. The AICPA has put some data guidelines around how to do data analytics, but that is already previous generation. Way forward, right? First, right, what is in front of an accountant today? So definitely, right, like how, and no accountant today can simply say, look, I don't know how to use a computer, right? As an accountant, when I passed CA long back, I could actually get away with some amount of that because we were just about starting computerization. Today, no accountant can say, I won't do work on a computer. Similarly, no accountant can say, I want to work with an AI system pretty soon. So pretty soon is, I would think, is like a 3 to 5 year framework. And that means an accountant has to find a way to understand and embrace AI, understand how AI works, and work on better decision support, work on risks associated with AI, work on how you can use machine learning to make your work better. There's a much larger opportunity, right, beyond, for an accountant, beyond finance, right, because other departments need the guidance. So today, your HR department needs guidance. So your HR department can very quickly be doing AI screening of candidates and holding the data, and by doing that, they might be violating privacy laws, right? This happens. These are problems that are very genuine. Something as simple as like a vendor sign-up form could put you in violation because you haven't framed it well with your business and accounting audit team. So when I say accounting, I'm using it very broadly in terms of what typical accounting organization does. Corporate governance frameworks and data bias risks are a huge problem. We've seen this day in, day out in examples. There are many, like Microsoft had a chatbot that was automatically speaking on Twitter. Eventually, learning from what people were saying on Twitter, eventually started saying things which were very racist. There have been cases where Google has done some horribly racially discriminatory kind of output based on recognizing people's images, sometimes comparing people to animals because their faces look in a certain way and things like that. So these can cause huge impact and huge risk for an organization. So this is very important. Privacy is very, very important. The emphasis of how serious it is cannot be, there's not enough emphasis there, and there probably needs to be 10x more interest in privacy than there is today. And the magnitude of this is very, very, very high because of AI. Because of AI, today you can pinpoint a typical website, and a casual visitor can be pinpointed by like 65 to 70 parameters. All metadata, nothing is person identifiable data theoretically, but when you have 70 parameters to a person, so imagine in this room, I have a 70-point questionnaire I have to fill about all of you in this room, and based on that now I have to identify who's who. It's very easy, right? So I'm going to say shirt color, and I'm going to distinguish everybody in like in 5 minutes, I would have isolated everybody. After that, I'll say with or without glasses. After that, I will say male, female. Now, all this is still metadata. This is theoretically accepted metadata by all frameworks around the world, very easily identifiable. And these are I've only spoken 3 parameters. Now we are talking about 70 parameters. So this is the kind of environment in which organizations are operating. And the risk department is probably needs to be the most aware department to consider how this works for them as a customer-facing organization. Obviously, I mean, one of the action that is required is to move from task-oriented work to higher scale analysis-oriented work. This is critical for all organizations and all people. And work cross-department is probably the most important thing for people to do. So how do you stay relevant when machines are becoming more and more powerful? Is by doing things that machines don't do so well, do things that are more human, which is collaborate, which is interact, which is transfer your expertise to somebody else, learn from them. So this is what will make all people relevant in the age of AI. This is what will make accountants relevant too. One survey question I just wanted to ask. What do you think is the best way? I don't know if this is something that this is like some voting pad thing, but I can happily do a show of hands. How many of you think A, B, C, or D? What is the best way for adoption if you are a finance department? Would you conduct training? Would you use software, hire talent, use external consultants? I just had one. How many of you for A? Okay. Sorry, B? Okay. C? Okay. So D? Nobody. Okay. So no external consultants, very little talent. Train, use AI automation software. Okay, fantastic. Yeah, no, it has to be a combination of A and B. It has to, actually, the answer is it has to be a combination of all four. You have to do A, B, C, D. Successful organizations do all four. But it's interesting that there is a significant bias towards A and B. Against D, of course. So yeah, so this is what we spoke about in terms of data bias, right? So if this was a machine learning from this room, it will basically come and tell us saying, don't do AI consulting, nobody wants it. Fantastic. So any questions that I can take? I'm done in terms of what I wanted to show.
Will there be a situation where, due to AI, my financial software will post entries without the finance department's knowledge? It's maybe a monthly recurring entry, but the amount may change every month, which requires a human intervention. But the system automatically, predicts and goes and posts something which is not wanted.
Very genuine. It's an excellent question, actually. Very genuine. Happens. I'm not very proud to say this, but I've made software that does this by mistake. So it happens. It's a genuine risk. The challenge is in terms of how it is designed and implemented. So financial statement close is a very critical activity, and you're doing a lot of provision entries. And this is also very difficult for organizations to do well, because it is an estimate. So we wrote software that will do that. It will make estimates based on what you did in the past and all that. The challenge is how well it is tuned back to the organization and accountant. So one of the things we keep saying is, do not replace the expert with AI. Right? Trying to replace experts with AI is too early. It's probably going to be too early for a long time. So if the system goes and posts entries by itself, there is a risk. So there are tasks where you don't want AI to do the final call. This is definitely one of them. We learned by experience.
In terms of whatever he has been saying, is it not true that even the fundamental features that are available in the existing software itself, it is the auto reversal or memorandum entries or provisional entries, or many of the features including external facing portals for capturing vendors in ERPs, I think many of these features are not even being used. For example, there are huge companies, not using CO part of FI. I mean, FI CO is not being used in a company which is 10,000 crore. That is the status. I think from there, we are trying to look at something like AI. In fact, people are all again talking about AI without even using 10% of what is already there with them.
True, true. See, two parts to that question, but that probably also answers why people hate external consultants. But jokes apart, there are two parts to it. One, in terms of adoption, typically like I said, accounting sides of organizations have typically been slow adopters of technology compared to many of the other phases of the organization. This has always been the case, including with AI. A lot of traditional features have not been used, is true, but the truth is, this is also true in a lot of other things in India. For example, we will probably adopt electric vehicles very quickly. Some people will probably have their first vehicle as electric vehicle without actually going through the whole traditional petrol, diesel, automatic route. So sometimes we skip generations in technology. The opportunities have been there, like cell phone, right? A lot of people's first phone is a cell phone. They have not had this whole landline, dialer, number and all that. So they've directly skipped that. So when the opportunity presents itself, we should still take it. Some of what has not been done should not bother us, one. Two, what this also allows you to do is to do things that have been very difficult and slow because of some element of human judgment required in it. The great thing about AI technology is that it allows you to do decisions that are approximately correct. It doesn't need to be exactly correct. So like my photograph from 10 years back is probably easy for you to say this is me. But if you put it in a software and then you want it to say, is it this guy, traditional software will say no, because it's not 100% correct. The big move is from 100% correct to good enough correct. So this is why understanding of decision making by businesses based on probability is very important from certainty. Today, that change, once that mindset change happens, that is typically done at college level and high school level. So decision making of that nature starts there. And people are already doing that. So once that happens, the change will happen very fast. Because the biggest thing when you are asking an auditor, right? So when I ask my auditor, so I have done this transaction now with this customer and I'm providing some service. He's sitting outside India. So I think it's an export, so I'm not going to do any GST. Is it okay? He's saying yes. I am taking his word for it, right? So the certainty quotient comes from the expert. His interpretation, there is another auditor who interprets it as no. He says no, place of supply is India, you're sitting in India, this is India only, you have to do GST. So there is a judgment element everywhere. What we don't do with traditional software or traditional experts is we don't work with the uncertainty, we work with certainties. With AI systems, the system is finally going to try to replace that expert. But it is not going to do that fully, so it is going to have you deal with some uncertainty. And I think organizations will adapt to that.
Yeah. As an auditor, I saw one sentence or one point that you had mentioned that especially when you're going to have large volumes of data that you're testing, and you normally tend to extract samples for test of details or for whatever purpose. Now, having artificial intelligence kicking inside, it is always possible, as you said, to run the entire population rather than selecting samples, which gives us more scope for analysis.
Right.
Now, what tool would you suggest as a a layman or someone who just wants to start inside AI per se, with your kind of experience that you already had? If you suggest some probable development tool or something which somebody could start playing around with, what would be your suggestion?
Okay, I would suggest to learn one of two, either Python or R. The reason why I wouldn't go through the entire ecosystem, technically some of what you can do can be done in Excel as well, but you will very quickly hit constraints. And every layer between Excel to the same tools we write AI in have constraints. And I would imagine you should directly use something like Python if you are going to do something yourself. It is not very hard to do once you get past the initial barrier. Or use a tool that will fully do this already, which is pre-built. Because as an auditor, one of the things that I keep telling most of my clients or experts is, you already have an expertise. Don't go now start trying to learn like a completely new branch from scratch. Try to get to applying your expertise on the transaction as quickly as possible. So fundamentally, there are tools that do that. So some problems, we provide a tool to do that. So we work with CPA firms to help them do this for their clients. But there are a few other alternatives, but if you have to do something that you've thought of and you're framing it yourself, I would recommend Python. See, maker checker is not needed, right? So maker checker is basically a division of responsibilities framework, because you don't want the same person to be writing and approving the check, for example, right? So today, with an AI system, you won't need a maker checker. The system will not write itself any checks.
Based on your experience, what are the challenges faced by the clients or companies who have implemented in the initial stages of AI?
Initial stages, a lot of challenges in data, is in getting and giving data, gathering and getting data and giving data out is generally a challenge. It's easy that's why I said ABCD, right? So this is where some external consultants help, makes it a little easier in the initial stage, so you can cross that initial barrier of adoption. So that's usually a challenge. Hiring and finding talent is also a challenge. So interestingly, those are the two things that organizations have clearly said they don't want to do, or you've said you don't want to do, but those are challenges. Hiring and talent is challenge because everybody wants data scientists today, and you have to find a way to get a critical mass of people. You can't hire one data scientist and expect to make progress, so you need a team. You need some data engineering skills, you need some analysis skills, you need some business skills. This is hard to put together, easier to buy from outside.
One simple question. A company has service design and strategy from the day one, okay? With all these 4 things, a company is trying to find out one simple AI that is good for some growth, okay? I'm going with all 4. I'm trying to get some good AI, okay? When I try to be in that AI, immediately or in a few months, I'm getting another AI which is good than the current one, okay? So I understand change is change, it's not permanent, but it's keep going, right? When will be the stop?
Okay, so when will be the stop is a difficult question. It doesn't stop growth doesn't stop for all of us.
Of course, but I'm spending, it's not a simple thing, I'm spending it
True.
all 4, right? It's a financial thing.
See, it is also a question of how, so it changes from transaction to transaction. I'm trying very hard to make sure I'm not going on like one edge answer. Before I do that, I'm just setting some stage, right? So it changes from transaction. Sometimes, some people don't necessarily do a great job of setting stage and selling what they are selling and all that. But having said that, usually you should have some shelf life. You cannot have something that is built operational and extinct very quickly. That should never be the case. The way you have to address it is typically by design. So while designing the system itself, you will have to have a learning component in the system, which will adapt as you go along. You cannot have an AI system that basically transforms into an expert overnight, and then after that it will take all the calls. You have to have a system that continues to learn. One of the fundamental things you have to do when you do an AI system is you have to monitor the learning and decisions progress of the system as well. Very much like how you would do if you had an expert, right? You will track if the expert is having bad days or he's now not concentrating, he is looking for a job elsewhere, his productivity is dropping. Same problems you will have to do because one of the things you will constantly monitor is monitor the error rate and learning rate of any AI system. So if it does 1 million transactions, how many did it get wrong? How many did it get right? And what kind of transactions did it get wrong? Is it getting only one certain kind of transactions wrong? So for example, we had a system where we go and predict subscription customers who are at risk of not subscribing next year. They won't subscribe. They are all going to drop off. So you are going to say my revenue growth year on year is 10%. I am going to say no, some 20% are going to drop. Your revenue is going to recede. So we have a system that does that. But for some kind of cases, the system predicts wrongly. Why? Because typically it takes data from many sources. One source is CRM. And whenever the customer is really raised like a really bad issue and there is a red flag attached to that customer in the CRM, the AI system has in the past learned that red flag customers are very likely to quit. So it starts saying this guy is at a risk of quitting. So as a business, if it is impacting you, you will need to go change and tune that. So we've deployed a system like that. 6 months down the road, we have to go back and reduce the weightage of importance for that red flag because it is throwing out too many false positives. You cannot not do that. It is very difficult for anybody to maintain one AI system that will continuously be working for a long period of time without someone doing active monitoring.
Thank you, Jayendran.
Thank you.
Thank you. First question, your voting pads. No, don't worry, we don't show the results. If you want. Next. I see quite a few people here. Only 65 are voting. Next. Exactly the same number. Next. There was one question. You can take it offline. You can ask these questions. That's bad. The number has come down. Next question. Thank you so much.